Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today, we're setting sail on a truly fascinating and sometimes pretty haunting journey. When we think of the Viking Age, you immediately picture those iconic longships, right?
Right.
Masters of the waves for centuries, striking fear, striking awe across continents. But for every daring voyage that made it back to port, how many just vanished? Swallowed by the huge, unforgiving North Sea, the Atlantic. So today we're going to dive deep into this. We're looking at sources like ghost ships of the North Sea and insights from World History Edu about these longships. We're plunging into the chilling mystery of these ghost ships, silent witnesses to just untold tragedies at sea. Their secrets really guarded by the ocean.
Yeah. And what's really compelling here, I think, is how you have these two sides of the coin. On one hand, this celebrated brilliant engineering of the longships, and on the other, the just grim reality of how many disappeared. It really frames the whole Viking experience, doesn't it? We'll explore both the incredible things they could do, I mean, reaching North America, and also the profound weaknesses that meant so many were lost without a trace. It's triumph, but also immense loss.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. Before we get into what went wrong, let's appreciate what these ships actually were. Our sources talk about them being these pivotal tools, exploration, trade, warfare, masterfully engineered. So what specifically made them such technological marvels for their time? What was the secret?
It really is astonishing when you dig into it. These ships, they weren't just boats. They were like the absolute embodiment of Viking innovation. Their deep connection to the sea. This is spanning roughly late 8th to early 11th century. They came out of Scandinavia, evolving from, earlier, simpler boat types. And the absolute key, the core of their design, was being clinker built.
Clinker built. What does that actually mean in practice?
Okay, so imagine overlapping planks oak, or maybe pine fastened together,
Mm-hmm.
almost like scales on a fish or roof tiles. This wasn't just about being sturdy, it created a hull that was incredibly flexible. Seriously strong, but flexible.
Flexible, that sounds counterintuitive for a ship facing the North Atlantic.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But that flexibility was the genius.
Yeah.
It allowed the ship to literally bend and twist with the waves, rather than trying to rigidly fight them. That's what made them so exceptionally fast and seaworthy, even in those brutal conditions. They sort of rode the punches.
That flexibility. Wow, okay. So beyond the clever build, how did this translate into, Viking society, their power, and were they all the same design?
Ah, that's where it gets really interesting. These ships weren't just transport. They were symbols, huge symbols of power, of prestige. Think about it. A chieftain's longship was his statement piece, maybe more than gold. And no, definitely not all the same. That's crucial. Longship is kind of our catch-all term,
Right.
but it actually covered a whole family of vessels, each adapted for different jobs. You have the carvy smaller, maybe for trade, local transport. Then the snekja, a bit larger, often used for raiding. And then the big ones, the truly fearsome drakkar, the larger warships, often with that iconic dragon or serpent head carved on the prow.
The dragon ships, yeah. The ones you see in all the illustrations.
Exactly. But even with the variations, they all shared key traits. Symmetrical bow and stern so they could reverse without turning around. Really handy. Shallow draft, that's key. Let them sail up rivers deep into Europe, but also handle the open sea. And that single square sail, plus oars for calm conditions or extra speed. Super versatile.
Okay, versatile, fast.
Okay.
But how did they navigate? We're talking open ocean, no GPS, no maps as we know them. How on earth did they find their way to, say, North America?
Pure seamanship, really. It's phenomenal. They use everything but maps. The position of the sun, the stars at night, the color of the seawater, wave patterns, wind direction, watching migrating birds, even supposedly the scent of land carried on the wind.
A scent of land, wow.
Yeah. Some sources suggest maybe a sunshade aboard, a kind of primitive compass, might have been used too. But mostly it was deep knowledge of the natural world and speed under good wind, up to 15 knots. That's roughly 17 miles per hour. Pretty quick for the time.
And how many people could they carry?
Depends on the ship and the voyage, obviously. A smaller one, maybe 20 to 30 warriors, the big drakkars, maybe up to 60, perhaps even more. But for long trips, like across the Atlantic, you'd need a lot more space for supplies, water, food, so fewer people.
Did they name their ships? Like people name ships today.
Oh, absolutely. Naming your ship is important. We know names like Long Serpent or Sea Stallion. Gives them personality, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And their cultural weight, immense. Chiefs, wealthy nobles, often honored by being buried or burned with their ship. It symbolized their whole life, status, achievements, even into the afterlife.
Okay, so we have these incredibly advanced, culturally vital ships crewed by skilled sailors. Yet, the sources are clear. Finding actual Viking shipwrecks out in the open ocean is incredibly rare. Why this archaeological silence for vessels that were so central? We know about them mostly from burials like Oseberg and Gokstad, or shallow water finds like Skuldelev, not the deep sea.
Yeah, it's a huge puzzle and a bit of a frustration for archaeologists. The main reason is, well, the ocean itself, the North Sea, the North Atlantic, they are unbelievably harsh environments. Even these brilliant ships, these seasoned crews, they were still tiny specks at the mercy of massive forces, and wood just doesn't last well over 1,000 years in cold, deep, moving salt water.
Eaten by shipworms, battered by currents.
Exactly. Shipworms devour wood. Currents can scatter wreckage over huge areas or bury it deep under sediment. Plus, wood just naturally disintegrates over time. And the sheer scale, the ocean is vast. Finding a centuries-old woodroot wreck is harder than finding a needle in, well, a continent-sized haystack. So most of what we find are those special cases buried on land or deliberately sunk in sheltered spots, not the ones lost in the fury of the open sea.
Which implies the number of ships actually lost must have been huge, just countless losses creating these ghost ships. What were the main ways they met their end out there?
I think the most common killer, hands down, would have been sudden catastrophic storms. A longship was resilient, yes, but imagine truly monstrous waves, hurricane-force winds in the North Atlantic. They had limits, capsizing, beam snapping, the hull breaking up under the stress. It would have been quick, violent, and likely left no survivors.
Terrifying to even imagine.
But especially on the northern routes to Iceland, Greenland, Vinland, you have ice, shifting ice flows, pack ice. A ship could get trapped, crushed. Even if not immediately crushed, the crew stranded on the ice. Hypothermia, starvation would set in fast.
So storms and ice? What else?
Less dramatic, perhaps, but just as deadly. Navigational errors, hitting hidden reefs or submerged rocks, especially in unfamiliar waters or bad visibility, and simply the toll of long voyages. Disease breaking out on board, running out of fresh water or food, sheer exhaustion. Every single voyage was a massive gamble against nature's indifference.
It really puts their achievements in perspective, knowing the constant risk. So how did the Vikings themselves process these inevitable frequent losses? You mentioned sources hinting at this, the sagas, legends. What do they tell us?
It's interesting. The sagas mostly focus on the heroics, the successes, naturally, but they don't completely ignore the losses. You get these brief, almost understated mentions, phrases like a hero who sailed west and was never heard from again, or a fleet scattered by the storm, none returned to port.
So acknowledgments, but not detailed accounts of the sinking itself.
Exactly. More like somber footnotes acknowledging the ever-present danger. It underlines just how common it must have been for a ship, maybe a whole expedition, to simply vanish. And when explanations failed, that's where folklore steps in. Legends attributed disappearances to sea monsters, the kraken perhaps, or vengeful gods, angry spirits of the drowned. It shows their deep fear and awe of the ocean's power, a way to try and make sense of the unknowable, the unrecorded tragedies.
These ghost ships, then, are still out there, silent monuments holding these stories. So if they're so hard to find, what's being done now? What can modern underwater archaeology do to try and uncover these secrets?
Well, the hunt is definitely ongoing, and it's driven by some pretty amazing technology now. We're way beyond just sending divers down hoping to stumble on something. We use sophisticated sonar mapping, side-scan sonar, multi-beam sonar to create detailed images of the seabed over large areas. We use remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, equipped with cameras and sometimes manipulator arms to investigate potential targets identified by the sonar. Magnetometers can detect iron fittings, anchors, even nails from a ship buried under sediment.
So it's about scanning vast areas and looking for anomalies, things that don't look natural.
Precisely. And it's getting more targeted, too. Scientists use advanced oceanography, modeling past currents and weather patterns, trying to predict where a ship lost in a particular area might have eventually settled on the seabed.
Trying to narrow down that haystack.
Exactly. And every discovery, even if it's just a few preserved timbers or some cargo, can offer incredible insights into how the ships were really built, maybe variations we don't know about from the burial ships, into trade routes, the types of goods carried, the realities of life on board during those long, dangerous voyages. Of course, the ultimate dream for many archaeologists is finding a substantially intact, well-preserved longship in the deep, cold, low-oxygen water of the North Sea or Atlantic. That would be the ultimate time capsule.
It really would. These ghost ships, they're more than just lost wood and iron, aren't they? They feel like silent monuments. Monuments to the courage, the skill, but also the tragic cost of the Viking Age.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They represent the unseen toll of all that ambition, the price paid for the exploration, the raiding, the trade.
And you have to remember, each vanished ship wasn't just cargo. It carried lives, hopes, dreams, families waiting back home.
Yeah,
All lost to the depths. That's the real weight.
it is.
So while their individual stories might stay untold, their silent presence under the waves just keeps fueling our fascination, doesn't it? Reminding us of the huge mysteries still hidden down there.
Which brings up a fascinating thought for you, listening right now. If technology could find and raise just one perfectly preserved ghost ship from the deep, what do you imagine would be the single most surprising or maybe the most impactful secret it could reveal about the Vikings? What hidden truth are you most curious about seeing brought to light?
Something to ponder. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We really hope this exploration of the Viking longships, their genius, and their tragic disappearances has given you a new appreciation for their world, both the triumphs and the harsh